Hello, my fellow brothers and sisters. It is me, Nicolasuian and Palavita, and I am the King of Greece. In our Holy Bibles, if we turn to the book of Daniel, chapter 8, we read in verse 21, "The shaggy goat is the king of Grecia, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king." So, a lot of scholars believe that this verse is referring to Alexander the Great, which kind of makes sense. That's understandable, especially as we go over things here. But to come to that conclusion, you must ignore the rest of the chapter, and you must ignore the rest of the book of Daniel, and you must ignore the entire chapter 8 of Daniel to come to that conclusion. It's an easy oversight, but, well, after we go over all this information here, you'll understand why it was the incorrect conclusion. Also, Alexander the Great is not the first king of Greece, and there have been many kings since Alexander the Great. There was his father, who was also Greek, and I'm sure there were others before that. Let's quickly understand why, in chapter 8 of Daniel, verse 21, that it is not in reference to Alexander the Great. So let's go to verse 26 of Daniel chapter 8. The vision concerns the distant future, the vision of evenings and mornings. So, verse 26 of Daniel chapter 8 deals with the distant future and the vision of evenings and mornings. More on that later. But let's look at that distant future part real quick. So Alexander the Great died around 323 BC. And the writing of the book of Daniel happened about, there are many estimates. I looked online. I couldn't find any real consensus. But, so the reign of King Cyrus was around 530 BC. And that's supposedly when Daniel was alive. Or, that's one dating the book, 530 BC, or 164 BC. So, either of those dates, you're looking at about 200 or 300 years, if you look at either of those dates. And one of those dates is actually in the future, after Alexander the Great was even alive, so it's like making a prophetic writing about somebody that already lived. Nah. So the date of 530 BC, it's 200 years in the future. That's distant future. We're looking for the distant future. We're not looking for 10 generations. Yeah, it's 300 years. What is that? So that's kind of like one hint, one clue. Distant future. It's not very. We're still talking about a very similar era, somewhat. Then we can also look at verse 17. Son of man, understand the vision concerns the time of the end. As far as I understand, Alexander the Great has nothing to do with the end of anything except maybe his kingdom. Not really. Kidding. Joking. I mean, he like his kingdom kind of got broken up. But Alexander the Great doesn't signify anything historically significant of anything ending. Like, there's no like change in. There's no paradigm shift. It's not the end of really anything. And again, in verse 19, this is kind of reiterated. I'm going to tell you the vision concerns the time appointed at the end. So something is ending, like an era is ending. And the time at the end has very little to do with Alexander the Great. So again, Alexander the Great doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for this vision. There is a part about the horn between the eyes of the goat breaking and becoming four kingdoms. Scholars attribute this to Alexander's four generals who took over Greece after he died and split the kingdom into four. So, I mean, like, and that's why it, like, kind of makes sense. Like, if you just, like, skim over it, like, oh, well, you know, this happened to Alexander the Great's kingdom, and this is the prophecy. Well, you know, they're just talking about Alexander the Great, but they're not. No, they're not. Also, let's, like, go over this linguistically. The middle horn is the first king. Alex is not the first king of Greece. The first king's kingdom broke into four kingdoms, is describing somebody else. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece. Alex is the king of Greece. So are others. But he's not the king of Greece. I am. And let me go back to verse 5. Suddenly a goat with a prominent horn between its eyes came from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground. I have done this. I have crossed the entire earth without touching the ground. Well, not the entire earth, more like the entire United States. But, you know, I have flown in an airplane, so this is clearly describing something else other than Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great did not cross the entire of the earth without touching the ground. And to go along with this, I'm sure you've seen this picture. It's probably my profile picture right now, but here. Well, I would like to show you a picture. So this is from my book, The Testament of St. Nicholas. This is from my book, and this is the back cover of my book. And I made this back cover before knowing the contents of the Book of Daniel. Here. And so if we, and also in my book, I discuss the second coming of Jesus Christ. So, contents of the book in here. The first genetically modified human being born to King David's lineage, of virgin birth, blah, 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 blah. Four blood moon prophecy. There was also a solar eclipse on the ecclesiastical New Year, right after this book was written. Anyways, so I made this picture before I knew about Daniel chapter 8. And that's why, like, if you read this book, which you really shouldn't, there's only one really, like, legitimate thing written in this book. The rest of it's kind of me writing a bunch of, like, funny things and just being funny and stuff. But I do not discuss Daniel chapter 8 in this book because I didn't know that I had put this on the back of my book. Whoops. So here we see the middle horn, and I will probably put a better graphic up here, but if we see that middle horn between the eyes of the goat, we see that it is the horn of the first king, right? That is the horn of the first king. The first king being George Washington, right? And then below the king, below the horn, is the king of Greece. That's me. Why would anybody that's professing the second coming of Jesus Christ make a picture like this? Because something told me to. Anyways, so, and as I've said elsewhere, I have red hair, I have green eyes, I'm Greek, I live on the corner of Santa Claus Lane and Superman Avenue. My name is Nicholas Ewing Palavita, which means, Nicholas, you are the well-born white scripture. That's what my name means. And a couple last things to kind of wrap things up. I'm going to go back to my book here real quick and just kind of remember this part. But I was appalled by the vision. It was beyond understanding. And this is at the end of Daniel chapter 8, verse 27. He says that, where he's like, I'm appalled by this vision. Isn't that kind of an appalling picture? Isn't that kind of like scary? Like, isn't that a scary picture? That's because this picture is what Daniel the prophet saw. This is the picture that he saw. So, along with all that other stuff that I've mentioned, there's also this like little worded bit here where it says in verse 26 of Daniel chapter 8 that the vision of the evenings and mornings that has been given you is true. So, evenings and mornings. This is a vision of the evenings and mornings. Alexander the Great has very little to do with the evenings and mornings. On the other hand, though, there was this fellow that said that he was the morning star. Right? The star of the morning. And the morning star also happens to show up in the evening, too. And that morning star is Venus. And that's what Jesus Christ called himself. I am not sure where he calls himself that exactly off the top of my head, but here's the quote right here. It's on the video, in case you're listening to the audio of this. Okay.